Hi, everyone. I'm here with Dr. Theresa Hammond. We're back for part two. We're going to finish up this great conversation about her dedication and devotion to the accounting industry and specifically chronicling the journey of Black CPA. So we'll pick up where we left off. And I know there were a couple of things you definitely wanted to share, but I also ask about what you're doing now and your commitment to the profession. And I always ask this question: what can we do to increase the number of Black CPAs and move from 1%? Where do we start? What do you think?
Well, there's so many different angles to attack. There's the professors encouraging students to to pursue an accounting degree. There's the accounting profession itself being more equitable in its hiring and promotion and its definition of what makes a successful employee, instead of defining it the same way they have for decades and decades in an old model that doesn't really fit today's business world or the culture that we aspire to in this country. But the thing I do mostly, I guess, besides being faculty advisor to the NABA student group at San Francisco State, I also am very involved in ACAP, the Accounting Career Awareness Program. And ACAP was started by NABA about 40 years ago in Seattle, of all places. It always kind of surprises me that it started in Seattle, but it's designed to encourage young people to at least be aware of the profession. We always tell them, we're not asking you to become accountants. We're just hoping that you will be aware of this as one of your options. And I find it really good to work with I really like working with high school students, because sometimes they think, oh, if I wasn't good at calculus or I didn't like trigonometry or something like that, then I can't be an accountant. When really being an accountant or being a CPA is really about understanding financials and being able to communicate that to other people. And so a lot of those students have exactly those skills. I became an accountant because my mom worried about money all the time when I was a kid. And so it came naturally to me to be like, oh, if I've got $8, how am I going to spend that? This week, what am I going to do? And a lot of the high school students that we work with have similar experiences. So I think they have an ability they don't even recognize as being an ability in the profession. So we at ACAP, like most ACAPs, we have a week-long residential program at a university that has been suspended. We're having our first one next week for the past 3 years, unfortunately. But what we were finding was that a lot of the students who were coming, they were outstanding students, and they were going to add to the diversity of the profession, but they were often coming from the more middle class or upper middle class areas in the Bay Area. They were coming either from private schools, private high schools, or from more wealthy suburbs, let's just say. And we weren't getting the students coming from, say, Oakland, which is where I live, or Richmond, another nearby community. And we really wanted to increase our representation. So one year, I was in charge of high school recruitment. So since we've been here, that was my area on the ACAP board. And one year, a few years ago, I said, out of the 30 students, I want 5 Black boys from the Oakland public schools. That's my goal for the year, because our chair, Eric Bell, encourages us to set goals. And I was like, that's my goal. And that year we got 1 Black boy from the Oakland public schools.
Just 5. You just wanted 5.
Well, yeah, we'd have other Black boys, but 5 from the Oakland public schools.
Okay.
Yeah, 5. It seemed very doable. Yeah, just 5. And we got 1, and he lives across the street from me, and his dad and I are friends, and he made him do it. You know what I mean? It was just like, it's like, that was not a success. And I was kind of moping about it. I'm sure I was moping about it, complaining about it with Eric. And he said, you know what, if they're not coming to us, maybe we need to go to them. And so we started a new program we call ACAP in a year. And we go to 2 different high schools in Oakland once a month. And we go all year. And we do some of the things that we do at ACAP in a week. We do a tax return one day. We do an inventory exercise another day. We do a stock market game, because we're trying to, and we make them do the balance sheet before and after with the value of their stocks, that they've invested in, how their investments change, but very simple financial statements. And then these other exercises that tie into that. The other day, Monday, we were just there doing a car buying exercise where the students had to choose. They got an imaginary job, part-time job. They had to decide whether to take BART, which is rapid transit, or to buy a used car or to buy a new car. And they had to figure out parking and gas and BART tickets and do a cost benefit analysis. And so it's been going really very well. And one thing I have to say that is a great thing about the profession right now is that I have over 100 volunteers who come at least once a year. So I go every time, and there are a couple San Francisco State students who come almost every time. And other than that, we do it with volunteers, a rotating group of volunteers. And some of them come twice a year and some of them come once a year. But there are a lot of people who are interested. Some of them are NABA members, some of them are Alpha members. And because the schools tend to be majority Black and Latinx. Okay. And a lot of them are white people who actually care about reaching out to high schools and raising awareness of the profession. So we have a really good group of volunteers. So that cheers me up. I don't know that it's moving the needle very far to be doing that in 2 schools in 1 city, but ACAP in general, expanding ACAP across the country. And I know it does exist across the country, and there are some efforts to expand it currently that I think that's a huge benefit that we can all be part of. But I think more fundamental change needs to take place. And I think the number one thing we could do to increase the number of Black CPAs is to change the educational system in this country so it's not so disparate between poor and rich. I realize that race and economic wealth are not completely tied, but the poorest schools are disproportionately Black. The richest schools are disproportionately white. And students, every child should have the right to equal and excellent education that will prepare them for whatever field they want to go into, including CPAs. And then the second thing we need is a TV show, Jackie CPA,
reality show following Black CPAs or something. It's got to be some type of reality show. Right?
Yeah, that's what we need to raise the profile of the profession.
Right. And I will say, you speaking on that, but what about what you're seeing in your classroom? I think at the beginning of our conversation, did you say that San Francisco State is about 5% Black overall student population? What do you see in the accounting program and in your actual courses, the number?
I think it's a little less than that. I do think it's not, 5% is already pretty low, but I think it might even be a little less than that. Like, I think the business school is 4% Black. So we're really trying to do, student groups have been decimated by COVID. I don't know if other people are experiencing this, but we used to have a very active Alpha chapter, and Alpha being the Association of Latino Professionals. And then we had a somewhat active NABA group. And during COVID, it just got really hard. Students did not want to spend 1 more hour on Zoom. And I honestly don't blame them, because I didn't either. And when you can't meet in person and have pizza and, have a, then why,
making a connection.
Yeah. So we really need to do, as we go back, and I taught in person this semester for the first time, fully in person for the first time since COVID. And as we go back to campus in person, we just need to do a much better job of creating a community within the College of Business to make students feel welcome. And we need to reach them when they're sophomores and they're taking intro accounting. And we need to, again, in my opinion, not have a bunch of PowerPoint being lectured at, and then have a multiple choice test at the end that doesn't really show what accounting is really about, or the analytical skills that the students need to have and often do have. And I think when you teach sophomores that way, they think, oh, this is interesting. It's not just memorizing, it's actually interesting. It's not just like a foreign language to them. So I hope as we get back in person and the student groups pick back up, that we can attract more students and have them feel like, make sure they know even if they're the only Black student in a particular class, they know other Black business majors that they can get advice from.
Oh, and I think other instructors, professors should reach out to you, because as you were talking about your students, that made me remember, as I was researching, get ready for our conversation today, something popped up on our website where your former students can give feedback about the professors. And I came across one for you, and all of them, they were praising your teaching style and how you made accounting so much fun. So I was wondering, what have you plugged into to make accounting fun? Interesting, because that was all the feedback. They really appreciated your teaching style.
Oh, that's really nice. I didn't pull it off on Zoom, that's for sure, because it's more difficult. But I try to get to know all my students. I certainly know all their names. Then I put them all in all the problems. So every time we have an example, it'll be Jackie Co. Jackie has a bike company and she buys this and this, and this is how she does it. And then we'll start talking about, let's say, variances. And you know how you have a favorable variance if you pay your labor less. So that's just how cost accounting works, because I teach cost accounting. So I'll always then start teasing Jackie about being such a bad boss. That she's cutting her employees' wages so that she can make more money. And I don't know, I'm not very good at telling jokes, but we find the humor in the situation as we populate like the examples we're doing with people in the class, because you'll be the boss and a couple people will work for you, and then I'll ask them if they think you're a good boss and whether you should have cut their salary. And I don't know, by the end of the semester, we all know each other. I also use food a lot, food examples. And I often have students bring food to class. So one day we were going around the room trying to get the ingredients for hummus, because I was like, I had asked Eddie what his favorite food was. And my student Eddie's, it turned out his parents own a Lebanese restaurant. Mm-hmm. And so he mentioned hummus. So I'm going around the room going, okay, what do we need? What are the costs of making hummus? And the Chinese students, almost none of them knew what hummus was. And so they were just guessing ingredients that weren't in hummus. And so we all just were, pretty soon we were all just laughing about what's in hummus. And then he brought Lebanese food for the entire class, the next class period. So yeah, I guess, anyway, it is, I love teaching, and I love teaching in person, and I love getting to know my students and having them get to know each other. And a lot of them then end up joining me volunteering at the high school. And then they also get to meet professionals, the other professional volunteers, and some of them get jobs that way, because it's a lot easier. Some of them are very nervous about interviewing. It's a lot easier to sit down and help a high school student with somebody from BDO or something like that, and then have a BDO, make friends with the person in that shared activity. So we're trying to do our best.
Well, that's good. Well, if you're a teacher, instructor, professor, those are some great tips on how to incorporate the students in part of the lesson, so it may be able to apply some of those concepts and principles. So that's a good idea. So before we conclude, a couple of other things. Is there anything you would like to share with the audience, or anything I didn't ask, or we didn't talk long enough on anything before we conclude this conversation? I won't say interview.
Well, I really hope everybody has a chance to read the book and just to learn the stories. I feel so honored that 35 of the first 100 Black CPAs shared their stories with me. Just some stranger showing up at their office or calling them on the phone and making an appointment, and they shared their stories. And honestly, many of them commented, "Oh, I didn't think I was making history. I was just trying to get a job." But I really feel very pleased that we can honor what they did contribute and what they did, the things they suffered through to make the world a better place for us today, and just to create success for themselves and their family. So I really appreciate the opportunity, Jackie, that you are doing to create more awareness of the program, of the profession, and to raise awareness of different careers, because I've listened to some of your interviews, and everybody does something different with this career, right? Like becoming a professor, or we're getting a CPA in public accounting, and then going elsewhere, becoming CFOs, and all the different jobs that you highlight. I just think is amazing. I was saying to you before we started taping that I wish I'd had all these interviews on video, because I'd love to be able to post them and be able to have access to the actual words and videos of the pioneers of the profession. But this is the second best thing, so I'm so glad you're doing it. So that's what I want to add, is compliments to you and kudos to you for taking on this just really important issue.
Of course. Well, again, thank you for authoring that book, because it's going to live with us, being Black and white forever. That's great. But one last question, as we were talking about closing the gap or increasing the number of CPAs, what do you think about the pass rates? Because I think even once we embark on that journey, we get derailed with retakes or the number of exams required to actually be a CPA. Have you done any research with the pass rates or the number of Black people who maybe start out but just don't ever seem to complete that part of the journey?
I haven't. So in South Africa, they're trying to increase the number of Black chartered accountants because, in 1994, when they finally became a democracy, there were just even fewer Black chartered accountants in South Africa, despite the fact that the population is 80% Black. But in the US, I've never seen pass rates by race. Have you?
No.
I didn't know that was available. But one of the things I think is a huge problem with the CPA exam now is that this is just from talking to my students and my former students, is that because you can take it anytime, like it used to be, you took it in May and November. And so the firms would know, okay, there's a bunch of people who are going to take the exam in November, right? Because it's not busy season. Okay. And so they would let them have some time off and they would all be taking it at the same time and they could support each other. And there would be like a sense of community and also like a shared horrible experience of taking the exam. Whereas now I feel like a lot of my students, whatever senior they're working with, is like, well, you can take the CPA exam another time. If they say, well, I've scheduled my FARS exam in March, they'll be like, well, we're really busy right now, so you can't do that. I mean, I just don't feel like, I feel like it's a disadvantage that it's because it's piecemeal. No one senior wants to be like, okay, you can take the time while you're working for me to study. I think that makes it more challenging. Even though everybody likes to say back in the day, we had to sit there tied to the desk for 2 days, and everybody likes to say it's always worse when their generation took the exam. I almost think it's worse now.
That's interesting. Well, I think more employers and universities should have you out and be on their panels to come speak to the business schools and the accounting students so they can get a true understanding of the profession overall, not just what Black people may struggle with. So again, thank you for your research and your career dedicated to chronicling some of the first CPAs, Black CPAs. So it definitely means a lot to me personally. So again, thank you for saying yes to this conversation. In other words, interview. So again, thank you for sharing your insight. This is very impactful and putting a face with one of my favorite books. So thank you, Dr. Theresa Hammond. It's been a pleasure to interview you and document what you've done on our channel. So again, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jackie, for doing this.
Again, I would like to thank Dr. Theresa Hammond for taking time out of her busy schedule to sit down and share her backstory and share some insight on what she thinks can be done to increase the number of Black people, African Americans becoming CPAs, because we are underrepresented, but hopefully that will change. So again, thank you, Dr. Hammond, for your time. And also, if you are an aspiring CPA, please reach out. I would love to document your journey. And if you are already a CPA, please reach out as well so we can inspire others to continue on and obtain those coveted credentials of CPA, Certified Public Accountant, behind their name. And also, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and also leave a comment. Please let me know what you thought about this particular conversation. I won't call it an interview. And if you would like to be a part of this channel, please reach out. And again, don't forget who you are and whose you are. There's no time like the present.